Can I ask this question? Does having COVID give you a swollen head?
Oh, he does look a bit puffy.
It doesn't. I'm hoping it's all right. Maybe it's just the angle of the camera. It doesn't even look like, unless he's a doppelganger. Unless it's like, how Donald Trump had 7 people that looked like him.
Oh, we're into some counterspin stuff now. He's been replaced.
Christopher Luxon suggests Davidson apologized to white cis men for violence comment. I won't necessarily go through the whole story because that's pretty much the headline. What I will do is go to the press talking to Marama in the hallway today, and they approach her about this desire from some of the opposition parties for her to apologize publicly. And this is a couple of minutes. We'll play the whole thing. This is Marama's conversation.
I have clarified what I intended to say and particularly affirm and acknowledge victims and survivors who may not have seen themselves in my comments and wanted to make sure I affirm their experiences.
The National Party is calling for you to apologise to those who you offended, i.e. white cis males. Will you apologise to them?
I have made things clearer in my public statement about what I intended to say, and particularly to the community, the experts in the field, to continue.
So she's staying on topic.
Can you go through what was going through your head, what was happening sort of at that time? Obviously, there was a protest, and sort of what the situation was where you made those comments.
In my public statement, I remind us that there is some misinformation about who is a risk to women, and particularly the aim at trans people, which is simply not true. And that's what I have clarified in my public statement.
The way that the Prime Minister described this, in terms of somebody from his office talked to somebody in your office to make this clarification, is that exactly what happened?
I wanted to make this clarification. That was important to me, so that's what I did.
But the way that he's described it, is that the truth?
I won't get down to who said what first. What is really important that I wanted to clarify what I had intended to say.
Isn't it quite important? Isn't it quite...
How are you feeling?
Thank you very much for asking. I'm healing well, thank you.
Yeah, the Prime Minister mentioned that you're suffering a bit from that bruising after the adrenaline's come off. Are you thinking that you might need to take a couple of days, or are you soldier on?
There's a lot of work to do, and I'm in a good enough condition to keep going.
How are you feeling about how this is all playing out? Are you frustrated with having to answer these questions, or do you get it because you're a minister?
I acknowledge that I should have been clearer in my words. I normally take incredible care. I understand the importance of my language and my work, and this is how much focus I normally take in the language that I use, which is why I have clarified it in my public statement. The whole morning was charged. There was beauty and love and solidarity for trans people who are far too often discriminated, oppressed and marginalised. And there were some horrific and have long-standing horrific aims at trans people being the biggest threat to women, and that is simply not true. So when the far-right media came to me, I was still in that charged environment as well, which is why I should have taken more care with the words that I use.
So she said a couple of times, the statement I released. It just would be good for us to check the statement that she released, so then we all know what was said. She kind of synopsized it, but this is off RNZ. Violence is unacceptable in any community, and as the minister responsible for Aotearoa's first ever plan to eliminate family violence and sexual violence, I am committed to an Aotearoa where all people are safe and can live peaceful lives, she said. Women are overwhelmingly more likely to be victims of family violence and sexual violence at the hands of men. It is also important to acknowledge the disproportionate impact violence has on our rainbow whānau and diverse communities. I should have made it clear in my comments that violence happens in every community. My intention was to affirm that trans people are deserving of support and to keep the focus on the fact that men are the main perpetrators of violence. I will continue to stand with my trans and non-binary whānau and support action to ensure that everyone can live their lives without fear or hate or discrimination. So I will throw the ball to you, Chewy, and maybe am I leaving now? Is this your pulpit? Or what are your thoughts?
I'm really impressed with that stand-up that she did, like, as far as like staying on topic, clarifying what she meant to do. Like, I don't think there's any wiggle room. You can't spin that another way. it will, and because of that, it will not get as much coverage as the footage that Counterspin have done, and the main media networks have decided to run with almost no critical input and no context given. As far as Luxon jumping on she owes an apology to all cis white men.
Look, let me just say this. Let's just say, I don't think that's a quote from him. I think that's a conclusion, because what the media, well, have a look, because I'm pretty sure what the media is, he has said is she needs to apologize to the people who she offended. And then the implication is it's cis white men. I could be wrong, but I'm not entirely sure he actively said, which if you have a look at my story, I guess that's why it's not in quotes. Like if you look at my story, says Luxon suggests Davidson apologize to white cis men. So I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm not going to stand absolutely by it. But I think that there's been a conclusion that who has been offended, it's cis white men, which is not actually true. I'm not offended. I'm not offended. Just have a look. Go for it. Have a look. See if there's actually a quote there. I guess we are splitting hairs a little bit, but it would be still good to know whether that's the case or not. I said this last night, Chewy, and I think we were a little bit on a different camp each other. It wasn't a smart comment to make. Yes, there is going to be all sorts of issues. She's just been hit by a motorcycle. The adrenaline's flowing. It probably wasn't a good time to make a statement. Maybe that's the lesson here, is to not actually make a statement at all when you're in that situation. And it did need to be walked back a little bit. Now, in saying that, we have heard from people who work in family violence. We played some clips last night of them saying that their experiences are that, and I think the lady said last night, 95% of the people they work with are the victims of white cis men committing violence on them. There's another really important thing to know, is that we put up some stats last night that were a part of a story that talked about convictions. Convictions aren't necessarily the way to find out who's committing the violence.
No,
because we all also know that minorities, Māori in particular, have a worse time of it in the courts than Pākehā. And a Māori and a Pākehā are in a court under the same charge. Research will show that Māori is more likely to be convicted. So in saying all of this, it doesn't necessarily mean that white cis males aren't the main perpetrators of violence. It doesn't mean that they're not, but it definitely means aren't the only perpetrators of violence, which is basically what was said in that Counterspin walk up.
Certainly, judging by social media today, there are a lot of white men out there that have feel personally attacked by this and definitely venting it on.
Are they those left-wing snowflakes that we were hearing so much about?
No, it's just been really notable that it's, in the spaces that I've been in, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, that sort of thing, people putting out like, Marama's made this racist statement. And it's just like, is it though?
Yeah.
Because, even on the most basic numbers, and I'm not talking about getting into the real nitty gritty of arrests and reports and convictions and stuff like that, this country is 70% white. Like, just from that, men are more likely to commit acts of violence. And therefore, you can very easily say that the most violence is done by cis white men. I don't have a problem with that as a cis white man. And she went further and said, in the world, and I'm sorry, but if we want to look at the ranking tables, I've got a few contenders there. An A Hitler of Austria, a Stalin of the Soviet Union, a Putin now. There's lots of cis white men that have been responsible for a lot of bodies.
Yeah, and look, you got to, what you've said is true.
Wrong?
Yeah,
am I wrong?
But then you can look at Mao and you can look at Mugabe and you can look at, you can go the other way as well. But,
also Rands.
Yeah. But, it's I just think the idea is, and this is me with my kind of political advisor hat on, which I have done in the past, is that you do need to walk this back. The statement that was made after the protest was too far. And on some level, and this might sound a little bit wanky, but it is an election year as well. Although I have read some things that are saying that the Green voter is actually going to help the Green Party, these comments. In other words, they'll be the people who will be repelled from this are never going to be supporting the Greens. The people that will be attracted to this are the people who are always supporting the Greens. However, in saying all of that, it still needs to be walked back and clarified. It needed to be, and it has been. And I think that the clarification is done. Of course, the media won't leave it at that.
No. I think it's a very clear clarification. I think she has absolutely boilerplated it out there. That's bulletproof, exactly what she meant. I think there's some lessons there. If you see someone from counterspin media approach, just swear your head off so they can't use any of it, or run them over with a car. Hit them with a motorbike. Seems to be fine.
We're not saying that. We're not saying that at all. Just very quickly, JN says perhaps it's Madame Tussauds rendition of Luxon. And Guru, I think, thinks it's a deep fake. So
to clarify, the man's a fake, not the image. Yes, yeah, very much so.